You wake up, not just from sleep, but from something deeper, a confrontation, a heartbreak, a failure you swore you wouldn't let happen again. And yet, here you are, again. It feels uncanny, doesn't it? That moment when you realize you've fallen into the same emotional pit, the same type of relationship, the same argument, the same self-betrayal. You saw the signs, you told yourself you knew better, but still, you walk straight into it, as if drawn by an invisible magnet. Why? How can something feel both familiar and foreign, both painful and inevitable? This is the architecture of the psyche at work, silent, patient, and tireless. Like a film reel looping behind your eyes, spooling out the same story, just with different actors, different settings, new excuses. The characters may change, the costumes may update, but the plot is always the same. And you wonder, am I cursed? What if the villain isn't fate? What if it's you? What if the enemy is not the world outside, but the hidden machinery within? Patterns encoded into your psyche like ancient software, still running the show while you scramble to press pause. Here lies the paradox. You feel in control, and yet you are being controlled. You believe you're making choices, but you're only obeying patterns, ancient, emotional blueprints etched by experiences you barely remember and wounds you never dared to name. How do you break free from something you can't see? Imagine a man walking through a dark forest, following a faint trail. He's convinced he's forging a new path, making bold decisions. But overhead, a drone would reveal the truth. He's walking in circles, over his own footprints, forever mistaking motion for progress. We're not unlike him. We congratulate ourselves for choosing differently, but if the pattern remains, if the wound beneath the choice still festers, then the outcome is already written. We don't choose, we reenact. And isn't that terrifying? That your conscious self, the you identify with, rational, forward-thinking, well-intentioned, isn't the one making the decisions that matter most? So the question presses inward, sharp as a whisper at midnight. What hidden parts of you are pulling the strings? What trauma still puppeteers your instincts? Why do you keep finding yourself in the same pain, wrapped in different stories? This isn't just about psychology. It's about identity. It's about who you really are beneath the masks you've worn for so long they've fused to your skin. Could it be that we are not living our lives so much as reliving them? And if that's true, if we're trapped in a recursive loop of our own making, the stakes become existential. This isn't just about relationships, careers, or emotions. It's about freedom, about whether you're truly alive or just sleepwalking through iterations of the same unsolved riddle. But don't look away, not yet. The shadows that shape your life are not content to remain in the dark. They want to be known, but they speak in symbols, dreams, compulsions, strange, cryptic languages that logic alone cannot decode. The mistake is not that we repeat. The mistake is believing that repetition is coincidence. And so, the real question is not, why did this happen again? The real question is, what is trying to happen through you, again and again, until you finally listen? We're about to descend further, into the layers beneath the pattern, into the architecture of the psyche itself, where Carl Jung stood like a lantern bearer in a subterranean cathedral of the soul. You felt the loop. Now let's find the origin. You weren't born into the world. You were born into a story, one already unfolding, already dense with inherited emotions, roles, and meanings. Before you even had words, the script had begun. And you became a character written by hands you never saw. Carl Jung understood this. He didn't see the psyche as a clean slate or a static machine. To him, it was a vast, living system, Part memory, part myth, part mirror. It housed not only your experiences, but those of ancestors, collective symbols, and unconscious drives too primal for language. So when you ask, why do I keep making the same mistakes? The answer isn't simple, because the force behind your repetition isn't logical, it's archetypal. It is the echo of something older than your ego's intentions. From the shadowed recesses of your psyche, archetypes rise like actors demanding stage time. The wounded child, the abandoned lover, the betrayer, the martyr. You don't choose them. They choose you. They animate your relationships, hijack your choices, and twist your perception of what is normal. But where did these roles come from? Look to your past, yes, but also beyond it. The patterns of trauma and behavior passed down through family lines, cultural myths, and unspoken rules. The mother who taught you love means sacrifice. The father who taught you anger is strength. The society that whispered success is the only salve for shame. And the paradox is brutal. You repeat these roles not because they serve you, but because they feel familiar. And in the language of the psyche, familiarity is mistaken for safety. Think of the child who learns that love is earned through silence, compliance, or pain. That child grows up and finds partners who demand the same, not because they enjoy suffering, but because somewhere deep inside, suffering has become a definition of love. How can you escape a cage you mistake for home? Modern psychology speaks of cognitive schemas, while neuroscience tells us that trauma carves literal pathways in the brain, well-worn grooves we follow again and again. The longer the path is walked, the deeper it becomes. Emotionally, neurologically, spiritually, you become someone who gravitates toward repetition, not by choice, but by design. Jung called this fate-like pull toward the same mistake the compulsion to repeat. He saw it not as a flaw, but as a message, a kind of psychic Morse code trying to deliver something essential. The mistake repeats because the lesson remains unseen. But what is this lesson? That's the unsettling part. It's not something you can figure out from the outside. It's not a rational solution or a self-help checklist. It's an encounter with the unconscious, a confrontation with the parts of yourself you've disowned, repressed, or exiled. In Jungian terms, your shadow. This shadow doesn't just contain your rage or envy. It also holds your freedom, your unclaimed power, your buried creativity, your forgotten wholeness. But to access it, you must face the patterns, the archetypes, and the painful memories not as enemies, but as symbols. Because here's the paradox that burns at the heart of Jung's insight. The mistake you keep repeating is not your downfall, it is your doorway. And the moment you begin to see it not as failure, but as message, everything changes. The anger becomes a guide. The heartbreak becomes a map. The shame becomes a key. Still, the pattern resists exposure. Society doesn't reward deep self-exploration. It promotes speed, distraction, surface solutions. Move on, they say. Stay positive. But when you rush to move on, you miss the gold buried in the wreckage. So the question becomes, how do you go deeper when the world begs you to stay shallow? In the next chapter, we'll explore how these hidden forces shape not only your personal life, but the entire fabric of your reality, how cultural conditioning, biological wiring, and psychological defenses conspire to keep you looping silently in your own existential myth. The loop is not just within, it's everywhere. Let's look at Elena, a woman in her mid-30s, sharp mind, warm eyes. She's the kind of person who lights up a room, but always chooses the shadowed corner to sit in. She's been in therapy for years, read all the right books, said all the right things. She knows the patterns. knows the men she chooses tend to be emotionally unavailable, knows the cycles of hope and disappointment that follow like clockwork. And yet, she does it again. A new man, different city, same ending. It always begins with fireworks and ends with ash. One day, after another goodbye and another week of self-blame, Elena says to her therapist, "I know better." Why doesn't that matter? Her therapist pauses, then answers, "Because knowing isn't the same as integrating. What you know is in the light. What controls you lives in the dark." That sentence sat with Elena like a stone in her chest. She realized she wasn't falling in love. She was falling into familiarity. This is not just Elena's story, it's ours. Our pasts don't simply haunt us, they construct us. The memories we carry, especially the unresolved ones, don't stay in the past. They become lenses, distorting how we see, choose, react, and dream. The external world becomes a projection screen, and the pattern? It becomes the film. Carl Jung observed that we project our unconscious content outward onto people, places, and systems. We don't just live reality, we create it through the filters of unresolved psychic material. This is how the personal becomes the political, the internal becomes the societal. The mistake you keep repeating isn't just a relationship problem or a personal flaw. It's a blueprint. It silently draws the architecture of your entire existence. Consider this. You believe people can't be trusted, so you test them, keep them at a distance. Eventually, they pull away, fulfilling your belief. And you sigh, "See? I knew it." But did you know it or manifest it? Or take another case. A child grows up in chaos, emotional volatility, unmet needs. They learn that certainty is a lie. So as adults, they sabotage stability. Quiet bores them. Peace feels dangerous. And so they create the same storms they claim to hate. This is not dysfunction. This is repetition compulsion. And it is both neurological and psychological. Neuroscience tells us that the brain is wired for efficiency. It favors the familiar, even if it's destructive. Patterns reduce cognitive load. The brain whispers, "You felt this before. You survived. Do it again." Meanwhile, psychology reminds us, unresolved trauma doesn't go away. It reemerges through behavior, dreams, attraction, and fear. The mind craves completion, and until the old wound is witnessed, it will reenact the moment of injury in endless new disguises, hoping unconsciously that this time it will be different. But it never is, and so the world becomes a mirror, one you keep mistaking for something external, when in fact, it's reflecting the shape of your inner architecture. Every broken friendship, every collapsed romance, every self-sabotaged opportunity, they're all part of a living myth playing itself out through you. But here's the dark irony. You will do everything you can to avoid facing this truth. Why? Because the pattern feels like you, like home. We are wired for survival, not for truth. And the truth is, breaking the pattern feels like dying, because it means letting go of the self that survived by repeating it. So you keep circling, like Elena, until one day she sat with a question she had never dared ask. What am I trying to protect by staying in the pain I already know? She didn't have an answer, not yet. But for the first time, she didn't rush to numb the discomfort. She let it echo. She stopped blaming the men, or her past, or herself, because maybe the pattern wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was an invitation. And if you, like Elena, are tired of the loop, then understand this. It's not just about breaking the cycle. It's about facing the self that clings to it. Because the world you see is not out there. It's a reflection of what remains unresolved within. In the next chapter, we'll confront this internal war head-on. We'll explore how to disrupt the script, not by force, but by stepping outside of the very identity that's bound to repeat it. because the pattern only survives as long as you believe you are the character inside it. What if the wound you keep revisiting isn't meant to be healed in the way you think? What if the goal is not to escape the pattern, but to understand who you became inside it? This is where the real shift begins, not by fixing yourself, but by realizing you are not the person who keeps repeating the mistake. You are the one watching it happen, the one finally asking why. Carl Jung called this shift individuation, the process of becoming whole, of reclaiming all the fragmented parts of the psyche and reintegrating them into consciousness. It is not a self-improvement project, it is a dismantling, a remembering, a return. And it begins when you realize that you are not your trauma, your coping, your cycles. You are the observer of those things, and that means you are something more. Let's go back to Elena. After years of repeating the same relationship dynamic, she didn't just decide to do better. That had never worked. What changed was how she saw herself inside the pattern. One night, after another unraveling love affair, she didn't distract herself. She sat on the floor. No music, no wine, just silence. She lit a candle, and without knowing why, she whispered, "Who am I when I'm not needing to be chosen?" It hit her like a blow to the chest. She had built her identity around being wanted, around proving her worth, around avoiding abandonment at all costs. And so, she chose people who would abandon her, because that's the only way her psyche knew how to play the role she'd been cast in long ago. That night, she didn't promise to never love again. She didn't vow to become tougher. She simply saw the role. And for the first time, she didn't mistake it for herself. And this is the gateway out. Jung believed that the psyche wants wholeness, not perfection. And wholeness includes the shadow, the parts of you you've disowned, the rage, the neediness, the hunger, the grief, the power. You want to stop repeating mistakes? Then stop rejecting your wholeness. Because what you repress doesn't disappear, it drives. It chooses your lovers, writes your stories, dictates your fears. Radical freedom begins when you let the shadow speak. Let the wounded child speak. Let the abandoned lover scream. Let the manipulator confess. Let the addict pray. Don't judge them. Don't fix them. Witness them. Give them language. They are not your enemy. They are your beginning. This isn't easy. It is rebellion against everything society teaches. The culture says, be productive, be positive, be palatable. Jung says, go inward, go downward, go dark. The path of individuation is alchemical. You descend into the chaos of your own psyche, not to drown, but to reclaim what was lost in the fire. And here's the most counterintuitive truth. The mistake isn't the problem. The fear of facing it is. Because the moment you stop running from the pattern, the moment you step out of it to see it clearly, you disrupt its power. You stop being the actor. You become the director. You no longer say, why does this keep happening to me? You start asking, what part of me keeps needing this to happen, and why? From this place, the psyche opens. Symbols emerge. Dreams intensify. You begin to notice synchronicities, moments that feel like life itself is trying to tell you something, because it is, and for the first time, you're listening. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But before you can become that, you must peel away everything you thought you were." This chapter is your rupture, your confrontation, your turning point. In the final chapter, we'll step into the deepest layer, the core revelation, the truth behind all the repetitions, the insight that rewrites your past and unlocks your future. And it begins with a question. If the mistake was the message, what has your life been trying to tell you all along? What if the pain wasn't a punishment, but a summons? What if every heartbreak, every betrayal, every sleepless night replaying the same regret wasn't trying to destroy you, but wake you from a dream you didn't know you were in? We spend our lives trying to escape suffering. We medicate it, spiritualize it, blame others for it. But Carl Jung saw suffering differently. He wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." This is the final paradox. The mistake you keep repeating is not your downfall. It is the soul's attempt to become whole. Let that land. The fight with your partner, the job you sabotage, the friendships that decay into silence. These are not meaningless echoes. They are psychic messages trying over and over to deliver something essential. And when you stop trying to solve the mistake and instead listen to it, you begin to hear the voice of something ancient inside you. Let's return to Elena one last time. Months after her last rupture, she has not met the one. She has not rewritten her romantic script. What she has done is stopped running from herself. One afternoon, she walks past a cafe where she and a former lover once fought. Her body tenses, but she doesn't cross the street this time. She walks by. She feels everything, and something in her softens. Later that night, she writes in her journal, "I used to think I was broken, that I was cursed to repeat love stories that ended in ache. But I wasn't cursed. I was unconscious. And now, I'm starting to wake up." Elena hadn't fixed her pattern. She had befriended the part of her that created it. That's when the breakthrough happens, not as a light in the sky, but as a quiet undoing of a long-held lie. That your worth depends on performance. That love must be earned. That mistakes mean failure. That pain means punishment. None of it is true. Jung believed that the unconscious drives us until we make it conscious, that the only way out of the pattern is through it, into its meaning. So here's the revelation. If you're ready, the mistake you keep repeating is the soul's language. It speaks not in logic, but in loops. It says, "Here, look here, you've forgotten something. Not something trivial, something sacred, a part of you. That's why it keeps happening. Not to torment you, to retrieve you. You lost something. Your voice, your worth, your boundaries, your trust, your joy, somewhere in the past. And until it's brought home, the psyche will recreate the scene of the crime, hoping you'll notice, hoping this time you'll choose differently. This is not karma. It's not divine punishment. It's psychic integration. It's the archetype completing itself. So here is your task now. Stop asking, why do I keep doing this? Start asking, what part of me is still waiting to be seen? Because maybe the pattern is the path, the mistake is the mirror, and the repetition is the ritual. A ritual that ends when you stop abandoning yourself, not with grand gestures, but with a quiet shift, choosing the difficult conversation, saying no when you're afraid to, sitting with the ache instead of fixing it, telling the truth. These are sacred acts. These are the beginnings of liberation. At the end of his life, Jung said something few understood. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And now, so are you. So, who will you become when you stop repeating the mistake and start listening to it? Who are you, beneath the pattern, beneath the performance, beneath the persona you've worn so long you forgot it was a mask? You don't need another answer. You need silence, stillness, surrender. Because the final truth isn't something I can give you. It's what emerges when you finally ask, if the pain was the messenger, what has it been trying to tell me all this time? Listen, it's already whispering.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was insightful and educative. If you like this video, do well to click like, share, and subscribe for more insightful videos like this. See you later. Bye.